Good evening. Call to order. The Air Pollution Control District Advisory Hearing Board is being called to order February the 28th, 2011, and the time is 5:36 p.m. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Stephen Herlock.
Here.
Daniel Murphy.
Here.
Mike Stubblefield.
Here.
Gary Gasparino.
Here. Excuse me. Be known for the record that we do have a quorum this evening. I would like to ask if there's anything else that needs to be placed on the agenda. If not, I'd like to have a vote to approve the agenda as submitted with the two petition numbers.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Call for the roll, or call for the question, please.
Daniel Murphy.
Yes.
Mike Stubblefield.
Yes.
Stephen Herlock.
Yes.
And Gary Gasparino.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to ask those that are going to be providing any kind of testimony or speaking this evening before the board and the district staff, please stand to be administered the oath.
Please raise your right hand. You and each of you do solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in the matters now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you very much. This evening we have two petitions. Item 4 on the agenda is petition number 834, the petition of Vintage Production California LLC for a short variance for District Rule 29.C, conditions on permits, violation of federal operating permit number 00004, which is the attachment 71.1N1, condition 1, and District Rule 71.1, crude oil production and separation, sections B1 and C1, requirements for storage tanks and gas produced gas. And for the record, this is continued from our last hearing board meeting, which was held on the 7th of February 2011. We will proceed with that first. At this point, I would like to ask the petitioner or the representative of the petitioners that were sworn in to please approach the podium and address the board. Thank you. State your name and pertinent information for the records, please.
Casey Shoemake, Mechanical Integrity Coordinator for Vintage Production California, LLC.
Dennis Newman, Health, Environment, and Safety Manager for Vintage Production California.
Please proceed.
We'd like to ask the board's indulgence to request a continuance of this matter for 2 weeks until March 14th of this year. Jim Lovins, our environmental advisor, is on vacation and has been for the last 10 days or so, and so we have not been able to prepare our answers to the board's questions as we were asked to do at the last meeting.
Yeah, we submitted a letter last week to address this to the board.
Yes, we were just informed electronically earlier this week with regards to that. I'd like to ask the board if they have any questions or how you would like to proceed, please.
Could we ask the district if it has any objections to the continuance?
The district doesn't have any objections to a continuance.
I'd like to say a few things. I'm not opposed to the continuance, but at the end of the last meeting, I'd indicated that I'd seen some typos and other administrative details in the draft order, and I would communicate my corrections to the board on those, to the district staff on those. And when I got into that, I ended up adding some things in my communication to the district that went beyond just administrative details, and the district communicated those to Vintage, and then I followed up again with a little further clarification. I'd like to explain those to the board. I don't know those questions are part of the issue that is requiring Vintage to ask for more time, but the points that concern me, during the previous hearing, I was very surprised to learn that Vintage had taken on the lease to become the lessee of this pipeline without having, as far as I could tell, any idea of the history, the condition of the pipeline, and it seemed to me that kind of a situation is not a particularly good thing for the public safety. It calls to mind San Bruno and pipelines, and so I requested that the results of the testing that they're planning on doing be made available to the district for archiving, so that this situation wouldn't continue. I clarified that in a second correspondence and indicated that what I was really concerned about was that to find out what agency or agencies was responsible for this pipeline and how the records of this inspection would be archived so that they would be available, because I consider a pipeline that's going under county highways and through cities in the county to be a public safety issue. And so even though the pipeline is probably not even covered by the permit and it's not quite an air quality issue, it's certainly a public safety issue in my mind. And I indicated that if it turned out that no agency or agencies was responsible or had authority over this pipeline, and that there was no mechanism for archiving the results of this inspection, that I would be prepared to request or ask the board to request that these records be made available for the district and the district to hold them, in spite of the fact that it's not probably exactly in the charter of the district. But it seems to me that when a board like this sees an issue that's public safety related, even though it's not directly air related, we shouldn't just slough it off. So I just wanted to explain that to the board.
Comments were for clarification. Is that correct, Mr. Herlock?
Say again.
Those comments were for clarification. Is that correct?
They were for informing the board, because this was a matter that by the Brown Act wasn't something I'd communicate to other members of the board. I communicated it to the district, and after discussion with Mr. Oriano, our counsel, he recommended that these be sent to the other party in the hearing. And so I wanted to let the board know that, and also to clarify and give the petitioner and the district any opportunity for further clarification on what I had communicated.
Okay, thank you very much. And I assume, Mr. Duvall, that staff be communicating that also with Vintage representatives, especially when the individual who's not here this evening will be coming back before the board on the 14th of March, is correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other comments by the board? Do you have any questions, petitioner, with regards to either the statement or the fact that we're going to be having a motion here for continuance to the 14th?
Yes, sir. Mr. Herlock, we did receive the comments. We're taking your comments and concerns, very seriously here. And there were some other comments about other operators also, what they would do as we would shut this pipeline down. So we're gathering that information there to be prepared to answer your questions, concerning, public safety. We believe we're operating the line safely. Regarding results made available, and how we deal with the DOT and these results, we're asking that question internally right now, if it can be made available or not. And the Air District might be able to help us out regulatorily on how we bridge from a pipeline into an Air District type thing. I don't know how we can bridge that communication of those results, and we're wanting to make sure, we have the right data as part of this line to have it available to understand how we're operating that line.
I appreciate that. I don't necessarily think that the right thing is for the district to hold these records. I would like to hear that Dogger or PUC or like State Fire Marshal or DOT or somebody has some responsibility for this pipeline, and that you would, make the records available to them, or tell them that you did the maintenance and let them know they can see the records whenever they want to.
This line's a DOT jurisdictional pipeline. Department of Transportation has a jurisdiction over this pipeline.
Thank you. I would, I'd like to hear when you come back, if we grant the continuance, how the results of your maintenance would be communicated to them or archived or something, so it's generally available.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can address that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to ask if the board's ready to make a decision. We need a motion to approve the continuance to the 14th of March 2011.
So moved.
Okay, there is a need a second.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion. Clerk, would you poll the board, please?
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Yes.
Mr. Gasparino?
Yes.
Mr. Herlock?
Yes.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the 14th of March.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, item 5 on this evening's agenda is petition number 835, petition of Veneco, Inc., for a short variance from Air Pollution Control District Rule 29.C, conditions on permits, violation of permit to operate 1494, which is attachment 74.23N2/1494, revision 373, condition 2. And also Rule 74.23 stationary gas turbines, which is specifically Section B4. Veneco is requesting authorization to continue operating gas turbines until the turbines can be retested. At this time, I'd like to ask the petitioner, please approach the podium and address the board, please. And if you would, again, also please state your name for the record and your position with the company. Thank you.
My name's Pat Corcoran. I'm the environmental coordinator for Veneco.
My name's Chris Fox. I'm a senior project manager for Veneco.
Please proceed.
As you know, we're here to requesting variance for continued operations of our 3 stationary gas turbines that we have on Platform Gale. Just to give you a little idea of what these turbines are for, we do not have grid power on Platform Gale. All our power is generated by these stationary gas turbines. So it's essentially our own little power plant on the on the platform. Without these turbines, we have no power. We can't operate. As you know, too, we have an annual source test that we're required to not only demonstrate NOx compliance, but also compliance with ammonia, what we call ammonia slip. Ammonia is one of the there's 2 ways that we control NOx emissions on the turbines. One is with water injection, and the other is with ammonia that's mixed in the catalyst in the exhaust to reduce NOx emissions. Now, we put these catalysts on as an emission reduction strategy a few years back. And we have successfully, I think we've tested the turbines 3 times. I think this is our 3rd time. We've never had this ammonia slip problem in the past. We didn't know of this problem until we got the results back and certified, by the laboratory that we're in excess of our 20 parts per million ammonia slip. So essentially, what that is the unreacted ammonia. When ammonia is injected into the catalyst, it reacts with the NOx, produces nitrogen, And if you have excess ammonia in there, well, then you'll have your ammonia slip, and that's essentially what we have here. Now we have, it's rather extensive source testing. We have 3 turbines that we test on 4 different loads and 2 different fuels. We mainly operate on natural gas, is what we burn mainly in the turbines. We occasionally burn diesel fuel as a backup primarily. But during source testing, we have to demonstrate compliance both under natural gas and under diesel fuel, and for 4 separate operating conditions: 30% load, 50%, 75%, and 100% load. I might add also that these loads we don't operate at the loads that we failed, except for 1 turbine on G3 under diesel. We do not normally operate under those conditions where we failed, meaning the lower loads. It's a requirement of the source test. We realize we have to demonstrate that every year at these lower loads at 30%, 50%, but we're normally operating around 75 to 100% load on these turbines. So the conditions that we failed the source test on are not conditions that we normally operate. The times that we would go through those lower loads is when we're ramping up with a turbine. These turbines don't just constantly run at 100% load all the time. It depends on what the energy requirements are on the platform at the time. And there'll be times when turbines get shut down, whether it be for maintenance or for no need for all that energy. So a turbine is ramping up and ramping down. So it's just a short period of time that we would operate, and I'm talking minutes at these loads. It takes several minutes, 20 minutes or so to get up to the loads that we want to operate. So those lower loads that we did fail, we would not be really seeing that too much, but we do realize that we have to demonstrate compliance during our source test. What we have done in the meantime, after this was discovered, we've been doing a lot of troubleshooting, trying to figure out what went wrong, and we think we've got it figured out. We replaced a catalyst on G3, which was our most troublesome, if you look at the data, that we failed at all loads on ammonia slip. We have a new catalyst in there, and we've been doing testing constantly. We have, although the ammonia results that you see in the source test, that's done by a third-party contractor that comes out there with all their equipment. We're not doing that, but we have what are called Threger tubes that we can insert into the exhaust system and test. It's not an official test method, but it's a pretty reliable method to give you an idea of where you are, and we're seeing very good results on that. So we think we've got G3 figured out, and currently should be running in compliance as we speak. On the other 2 turbines, G1 and G2, we have 2 more catalysts on order, and they should be in shortly, I believe, later this week. And it will take some time to get them installed and to kind of go through a shakedown on that. Now we have originally we had a March 9th test date, but when we first filed the petition, that was the date that we had set, but that was prior to us deciding that we needed the additional catalyst, or that it would be in our best interest, in everybody's best interest, to put new catalysts on all 3 turbines. So we pushed that date back to March 24th. And we'd be conducting our tests on March 24th and 25th. it takes pretty much 2 days to get through this. It's a lot of time and effort to complete these source tests. And then the official, although we would have some indications whether how our source test is going as we test, because we will be prepared with Draeger tube sampling to get an idea of how good our ammonia levels are looking. But the official data, it has to actually go to the lab and be certified and then received. But we will work with the source testing company on putting a rush on that data so we can get this data back as quickly as possible. Anything you want to add?
Chris, would you like to say anything to the board? Address-
No, I think Pat nailed it. We just had a lot of troubleshooting on G3. We saw immediately we needed to change out the catalyst. If you read the first few pages of the hearing board paperwork here, it says basically we were over injecting ammonia, and we kept raising the ammonia rates to meet NOx, and we determined it's probably one, we were over injecting ammonia, and two, that the catalysts were starting to go bad. So it's pretty simple what the problem is, and we're being very proactive about ordering and having those new catalysts delivered and getting them installed and redoing the tests as soon as we can. We absolutely want to be in 100% compliance, and we were very surprised by this year's source test results after having 2 good years of source test results prior. Management's very focused on getting this out of the way, and we're anxious to be in compliance and keep operating out there.
If I may add something here, part of the district staff report was concerning worker safety and any ammonia exposure, and that we develop a program to monitor and have a mechanism for employee reporting if there was any reports of exposure. I just want to add that we already have things like that in place for all chemicals that we store on the platform. We go through an extensive review that we call management of change. And anytime we bring a new chemical out, whether it be ammonia or benzene or whatever chemical we bring out, we go through this management of change where all the operators, all the people that work on the platform are, we tell them what we're going to do. We tell them what new chemicals we're going to be bringing out on the platform. We tell them what the dangers of those chemicals are and the symptoms of exposure, et cetera. And then that gives an opportunity for during this management of change process, to give all the operators and the workers on the platform a chance to ask questions of the engineers of just what this process is. So everyone's involved before we even bring this stuff out. So they're very, very well informed on the dangers of all chemicals, not only ammonia, on the platform.
Right. On the exhaust in particular, it's going off I think a 24 or 30-inch stack off which direction is that? One side of the north side of the platform, and people aren't directly exposed to that, but our normal exhaust, our worst case in our reported emissions results was 37. All our intermittent handheld devices, we're real marginal. We're close to compliance on almost every unit, and we just think the new catalyst will be icing on the cake. So we're nowhere near this 200 parts per million that could affect health over a multi or over an hour's worth of exposure out there. Just want to make that very clear. We take safety very conscious of safety out there.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the board if they have questions of the petitioner, please. Mr. Stubblefield.
Okay, help me out here. I want to clarify some terms.
your permit mandates that you inject at least, what was it, 10.5 pounds per hour or 1.4 gallons per hour of ammonia.
Correct.
So that's what you've been doing over,
It requires that we do that at a minimum.
okay.
Yes.
And has that been working out all right until recently?
Yes, until this...
And do you have a way to calibrate the amount? I assume you have a meter or something to tell you how much you're injecting?
Yes.
But did I hear you say you think maybe you're injecting too much?
Correct. I think
I inferred from that you suspect that perhaps you could get by with less, and maybe this extra ammonia that you're injecting is causing the increased ammonia slip? Is that, am I following your reasoning?
Yes, you are. It's a combination of two things. The water, when mixed with the ammonia and the catalyst, help to also dilute the NOx and the ammonia slip. So we don't believe we've been following the excess ammonia with enough water. So we've been trying to find a balance between the water and ammonia injection rates with the fuel at the different loads to get that optimum performance. We were overblowing the NOx requirement, or significantly under the NOx requirements. Where we were getting eaten up was the ammonia slip. So we're obviously pumping too much ammonia in there. And part of our reapplication, or part of this, it says in here, the applicant will probably have to request a change of the permit to pump less than, or inject less than 1.4 gallons per hour of ammonia.
And I have one other question. I don't know if it's related to that or not, to your problem, but your chart is talking about turbine load. Define turbine load for me.
It's the power output of the turbine. So if the turbine can put out 4 megawatts of power, okay, which is just a unit of power. If it's operating at 50, let's say, and this is just for example, then we would be at 2 megawatts.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
Then, yeah.
I didn't know if it
but
related
just to add to
throughput.
that, there is...
It's just output.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well,
And that changes with the weather and temperature conditions outside. What we can normally get up to about 3.4 on a low temperature day with not much humidity in the air. We rarely get toward that 4.
I see. Well, according to your chart, the ammonia slip rate seems to go down as the turbine load goes up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So at 30%, it seems to have more ammonia slip than it does at 75%.
Correct.
Why is that?
Your burn efficiency just isn't as good. You're not loaded up there. The temperature you're usually not up to temperature, which increases the catalyst temperature as well.
Okay.
That load temperature is based on 1895 degrees operating temp. That's what full load is actually considered. The output is, you can't run the machine any hotter than that, or it'll start falling apart. But
So the problem could be temperature related as well.
we've been looking at that as well, and trying to make the test our handheld measurements consistent. I think that was one of the big problems. We work 4 different shifts, 12 hours a day, a week on, a week off, and this isn't an excuse, but they're so used. They've been used to for 2.5 years, everything running just fine, and now they have a problem. So part of it was just getting a bunch of different people on board to do the same procedures every time to get the same consistent measurements. Again, I feel we're very, very close between all the crews, and this new catalyst will assure that we get good data for you guys.
Okay, one final question. How long has this system worked okay?
Since, what's the date it was installed?
Well, our first selective catalytic reduction unit we put on G3 or G1 was 2008. So
So, a couple of years?
yeah, we've had
Over 2
we've
years.
had 2 successful source tests where we had no issue, and then this
And it's only recently gone south on
the
you?
first time
Yeah.
we've had any problem. In
Okay.
fact, previous years it was almost negligible. Now, that could be variations in source test data, but I have to assume that
even if it was negligible, and that whether that was low or not, it probably wasn't much higher than that, or what we're experiencing now.
Well, I'm curious why you would conclude now, I mean, I don't know, it's over my head, but I'm curious why you would conclude now that perhaps you're injecting too much ammonia when it worked okay for a couple of years.
Oh, the reason
How come it didn't, how come it wasn't defective from the get-go?
Well, with the life of the catalyst, you know, we're required to take a daily emissions test on the NOx for the oxides of
Right.
nitrogen. It's
Yeah.
part of our permit, it's a permit condition. And some of the operators had noticed that they had seen a little bit of an increase in the NOx. We're still within the limits, but they see an increase in the NOx, and one of their reactions to that was, well, let's bump up the ammonia rate. And we bumped up the ammonia rate. Now the chemistry still says we should, based on the data that we know, that the chemistry says we still should be okay with the ammonia slip. Well, but theory and reality sometimes don't work, or don't match up. And we thought we were okay, because our permit says we have a minimum that we need to meet. There's not a maximum. So we could go up, but we can't have ammonia slip. And that's when but we didn't know that until we had the, source test data.
The manufacturer says the Cadillacs are supposed to be good for 5 years, and when all 3 units, are showing poor performance with nothing else changing, really, over the last few months, we're going to say it's a catalyst. We've checked seals. We're familiar with a lot of different types of catalysts on different engines, and people check seals. It actually gets around gaskets and sealing. It wasn't that. We double checked all that. There wasn't patches for pocketing or places where the exhaust gas are migrating through the catalyst. So we believe the whole catalyst beds themselves are just deteriorating after this 3-year period.
Does each turbine unit have its own catalyst?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's 3 cats.
Yes.
All right. No more questions. Thank you.
Good questions, Mr. Stubblefield. Any other questions? Mr. Murphy.
I think you've explained in your testimony why you couldn't agree to say we're always going to run these things at 75% and above. You explained that. Is it possible during the variance period to commit to not using diesel?
When we usually have to use diesel is when the platform goes down or goes black for a major electrical issue or a major turbine issue, and we usually, for reliability, can run a unit on diesel. I could say we would try very hard not to. We'd probably go down, we'd average maybe a day every 6 weeks.
Okay,
So
so
certainly
there are
benefit it.
emergencies.
And it costs a lot of money to burn diesel, one, and the lost production while we're now running at least 2 of the turbines is considerable. The cost involved is considerable.
Yeah, we definitely prefer to run on natural
It
gas.
behooves us to run in compliance.
Yeah.
So in emergencies, you are unusual circumstances, you need to use diesel, just like sometimes you need to go lower than 50%.
Right, and I don't have that documented, but I'm guessing about a day every 6 weeks that we go down for something where they're running on diesel or slowly ramping up to make sure things are okay, whether it's a little longer than your normal, 30-minute warm-up period.
And of course, it's kind of almost self-evident, but just for the record type of thing, the excess slip ammonia would be much less harmful than if you didn't use the ammonia and let all the NOx go untreated.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just wondering on the timeline here on that, the testing was done in October that you found out that you did the testing that gave you these results, and then 2 months went by before you inform the district about it, and then, which was in December, and now about another 2 months before you made the application. Could you explain those time frames for me and why it takes that particular length of time?
Okay, well, after the source test is done, it takes several weeks to get the, source test data certified, if you will. It's third party. The ammonia has to, at least some of the source test data is immediately available to us, like the NOx, although it's not certified. But we have an idea during the test. There's a direct reading instrument out there that the testing company will tell us whether we have a problem or not. The ammonia, there is no reliable direct reading instrument to
Certified.
right during the test. So it's essentially a laboratory sample that is collected, and then it has to go off to laboratory. And then the data comes back to the source test company. They crunch all the numbers. This report's this thick. It's
700 pages.
Yeah, and then they issue the source test to us, and we submit it to the district. Now, when we first found out about the ammonia slip, it was really at the suggestion of the APCD that we apply for this a petition for this variance, mainly because we don't necessarily operate at those loads that we didn't pass, but just knowing that we will go through, like I was saying before, we ramp up and ramp down. And under a non-normal condition, we may be operating at that load, although highly unlikely, that we petition for this variance.
Finally, you were talking about how you normally do all the noting of any odors and everything that was called for in the draft order here, that you report about any ammonia odors that are detected. Prior to your testing in October, had you ever had anybody that was reporting any noticeable ammonia odors?
No, sir.
Actually, our biggest concern is the tank out there as a hazard, the lifting of the vapor recovery device on the ammonia tank. And we haven't had it, even during ammonia transfers from the delivery totes to the tank, we haven't had an issue. And we certainly haven't had an issue with the catalyst. So.
And my understanding is that from the draft order, you want to change what had been in the draft order as March 12th date that you do your compliance source test. You want to change that to March 24th?
24th and 25th, that's correct.
Yeah, commencing on the 24th, I guess.
And that would be on the draft variance order on page 8, A2.
8. It's in there twice, I think, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it says on page 3, the second paragraph.
24th and 25th.
And then on page 8 again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, 8A2. That's correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Hurlock.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and it's generally along some of the same lines. I'd like to ask you to explain to the board what kind of flexibility you have in terms of the equipment and the control systems and the personnel training, whatever it happens to be, to control the operations of these three turbines, whether you can, say run G1 and G2 at 100% and not run G3 at all, if that's possible, and whether that's a manual control or whether you you do that with some sort of software, or, and then on the other side, are you able to tailor the ammonia injections somehow as a functional load?
Well, we do have the option. We've been trying to run the platform with 2 generators. It's obviously more cost effective. G3 is actually a good one right now. G1 would be the second better one, and G2 would be the one we would try not to run, since it's currently, not according to the previous data, currently what we're, on our handheld devices is doing not doing as well as the other 2. So the flexibility to do that is mostly our gas sales.
Yeah.
Did I say something?
Excuse me, maybe I should restate my question to begin with. I was wondering if you can run G1 and G2 at 75 or 100%, which, as I read the chart on page 3, are conditions where there's no slip, or the slip is within permit.
I think at 75, go ahead, Pat.
Well, I mean, just to answer your question outright, there's 2, we can control what we run.
Okay.
I mean, if we want to run one at a certain level, obviously we do that during the source test. You know, we can control it. Now, normally, that's not necessarily how it works. It's more of a software package, if you will, that based on the demand, the power demand of the platform, whether what else is going on, what pumps are running, et cetera. Well, that demand says, okay, it tells this software that we need this kind of output. So, yes, we can turn one turbine on and turn another one off. And can we run it at a particular load? Yes, we can control it both ways.
But those are operator rather than automated situations.
The load sharing software, depending if you have 2 or 3 running, it balances between with however many engines are running.
I mean, you said that you could run right now, based on your results you've had since these source tests, you'd prefer to run G2 on natural gas as high as you can, and then put the rest of the load on the other ones.
Well, it's not the rest. It's they have to run pretty evenly. So you either run 2 full out or 3 a little lower than that. The latest data we have shows in that 75% range. We're very close to compliant on all 3 units. I didn't bring all the data with me, but 3 again with the catalyst replace. 1 is doing quite well. It's 2's just right on the ragged edge on a couple. Usually on the lower numbers, the 30 to 50% data, and we don't operate there. So we're pretty confident that most of the running time will be compliant, but at that lower loads, as Pat said earlier, we're just having a little difficulty, but in particular G2 at this time.
Okay. Then the other part of my question, I think you were getting just about to respond to it, whether you can control the ammonia injection and tailor that, whether that's software controlled or that's operator controlled.
That's based on the meters of the fuel, based on the fuel volume, the ammonia and the water volume are adjusted by control valves to inject over there. They can hand tweak it, but what we've done is over the operating range and by calculating it, try to start with the calculations as a starting point and see how that relates to reality and fine-tune those numbers at 30, 50, 75, and 100% load.
And it sounds like you expect during the next 2 or 3 weeks to discover ammonia flow rates that are best for these 3 turbines at these different operating conditions.
Correct. We'll be injecting a bit more water. I'm sorry.
No.
We'll be injecting a bit more water and a little less ammonia. The water rate varies from 0.72 gallons per.
It's actually pounds per pound.
Pounds per pound, and the maxes out at about 0.95 pounds per pound. So the operating ranges makes a big difference over a short volume increase. The NOx and the ammonia come way down, just with a small increase in water.
Well, I think that's just about it. When we grant a variance, one of the things is the time that you plan to be in compliance, and I don't think that's in the draft order at this point, so we need to, so unless I'm missing it, we need to get that established. Yeah. So we can bring that up when we talk to the district, but I want to make sure we don't lose track of that.
Well, I could throw out some information for thought here. Assuming that we test on March 24th and 25th, which we're already scheduled to do. Normally it takes, the district usually requires that we submit our source test data 45 days. Correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, 45? Yeah. From the source test date. We will most likely have that source test report prior to that. I don't know what that date is, but let's say if it's just, we could probably promise 3 weeks. We just put a rush on the lab and we tell the source testing company to get it done. They will find a way to get that done. So let's say that puts us into
90 days.
Middle of April. There's some starting point right there.
Okay. I mean, we don't want to have come up tonight with a date that's so soon that we end up all coming back here just to learn that you're waiting for your source test company to get you the results. So just make sure we're comfortable there.
Well, we're doing a few more things. We're going to do these handheld device samples, and we're going to do the lab result that they normally take to shore. It takes a week or two to get the answer on the ammonia slip. We're going to do that offshore to calibrate our Draeger tubes and our other handheld devices. So we'll have immediate data there where we normally would send everybody home and not know what's going on for a couple of weeks till all the numbers came back. And I think we'll be able to respond or check any parameters on the test that aren't within the norm and adjust those to get you guys to get everything running properly.
That portable lab test is not certified?
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
It's accurate, but it's not certified.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Just a few more questions. Why do you have 3 turbines? Is it for redundancy, or are they just dedicated to different jobs on the platform?
The platform originally designed with there's 3 turbines. One is a spare. With the increased water volumes we produce now, the platform probably came on producing 10,000 barrels of oil and 7,500 barrels of water. Now it's making 4,000 barrels of oil and 32,000 barrels of water. So we spend a lot of money lifting and processing water. Sure would like to process oil, but you have to lift the water with the oil. So the 3rd turbine is required for enough power to lift everything out there and keep it moving. So our spare is now in a crate on shore, and we're in the process of ordering another spare turbine at the cost of about $675,000 a pop, just to make sure we have backups for these devices if they go down.
Okay. Next question. It's said in the staff report on page 3, in the paragraph right above the table, the last sentence of that paragraph says, the worst case operating scenario for excess ammonia emissions would be simultaneous operation of turbines G1 and G2 on natural gas at a 30% load and G3 on diesel at a 30% load. This would yield excess ammonia emissions of 1.39 pounds per hour. But there was nothing in the staff report about what the best case operating scenario would be. So my question is, what would be the best case operating scenario? And, I mean, looking at the table that staff provided the board, it was on the last, it was table 1.
Right.
I highlighted the worst case, and sure enough, G1 and G2 at 30%, put out the highest excess ammonia pounds per hour, along with G3 operating at 30%, it puts out the highest. But is it possible to run some combination of the turbines at their higher load, which seems to be more efficient, which puts out less ammonia?
Correct, and Pat stated previously, if you look at the 75 and the 100% loads, and I'd say we typically run between 70 and 80 is our norm, maybe a little higher for 2 turbines, a little lower for 3 turbines.
I mean, they're generating electricity, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's okay to have too much electricity, right?
Well, just costs more money. That's why we prefer to run 2.
Yeah.
Just overall, the efficiency isn't linear on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if you ran 2 at a higher rate of efficiency rather than 3 at a lower rate, you might get less emissions.
But our normal range again is above the 50. So those are all zeros if you look at the excess ammonia in those 2 columns across the board on diesel and natural gas. And this is the old data. I assure you, we've made improvements, significant improvements since this data's been produced. Our biggest problem right now is on diesel in the 30% load range, which is almost non-operating condition. So I can't guarantee it.
But it's technically doable, right?
Yes.
I bring this up now because I'm going to ask the district to put some form of that in the draft order if the board agrees with me, that you'll make a good faith effort to do just that.
And I think
during this variance.
There's a number 5 on page 6 in the draft order.
Is it in there?
And that's the one that probably needs adjustment since we're doing a little better than we were
I didn't see it.
during the initial test or during the source test.
Oh, number 5. Yeah. Okay. All right.
We could probably state that a little better for you all.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stubblefield. And I've always said, being chair, if you're the last one to ask questions, you don't have many questions left. Very good questions of the board to the petitioner. Procedure for reporting occurrences of ammonia orders on the platform. Do you have something in place right now?
Yes, when I was discussing about the MOC, the Management of Change, and then we also have what's called our Hazard Communication Program. It's one of the segments of our safety program, where and let me speak specifically to what could happen. Let's say if a worker was exposed to felt he was exposed to ammonia. Okay, well, we have a medic, a full-time medic on board offshore on all our platforms. That person, if he's experiencing symptoms, he is actually required by our program to report to the medic and tell the medic what his symptoms are and what he thinks if he does have any idea what is causing these symptoms. The medic's not a medical doctor, but I mean, we're essentially first aid level as far as we go out there. But the medic there's an incident report that is prepared by the medic, and that incident report goes to the supervisor on the platform, and then also goes to us on shore in the
HES
Health and
manager.
Safety department. So there is a mechanism for reporting already, and if there are any discoveries during that process where there is a need for change or a recommendation for change or further investigation, then that's part of the process also.
Yeah, we'll do a root cause on anything that caused an accident in general, on anything causing exposure. We'll do the same thing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And I heard you say earlier in one of the responses to the question that was asked by one of the board members that you've been in operation for well over 2 years and just recently experienced this increase. During that period of time, had you ever had any problems with ammonia and in contact with workers or any complaints?
No.
Whatsoever? Okay.
Not that we're aware of.
All right, at this time, thank you very much. Any other questions of the petitioner? Otherwise, I'd like to ask the district now to please state their conditions and statement with respect to the petition.
Well, as we stated in our staff report, we do support their petition for variance. And I think, as they've indicated, their periods of excess emissions are really kind of minimal. What we've presented in the staff report was really the worst of the worst case. And I think what you've heard tonight is that those levels would not be approached, or if they are, they might happen just very, very infrequently for short periods of time. One of the things that initially concerned me when we got the petition was the ammonia emissions and the impact it might have on worker health and safety, and so we did decide to put in the conditions on the reporting and of any exposures to ammonia, and I think they've adequately addressed that. I'll just say the selective catalytic reduction systems are really a complex process, complex controlled systems, probably one of the most complex systems that we have here in Ventura County, because you're dealing with fuel flows, you're dealing with temperatures, you're dealing with water injection rates, ammonia injection rates, and then on top of that, the catalyst itself does lose its reactivity, so that kind of plays into the injection rates and the ammonia rates. So it's a very complex set of scenarios that goes on, and when you only test once a year, you may end up missing the mark occasionally, and that's what happened in this case. So I would be open to any questions. I do have maybe one or two minor changes that I'd like to propose in the draft order on top of what we've discussed about the source test state and talking about changes. I would like to suggest that for the final compliance date, we provide the full 90 days that's allowed for a short variance. My reasoning for that is that it's more than likely Veneco will have to submit a permit application to the district to change their permit condition that they're in violation of. What we typically do is in the engineering division is once we receive an application and review it, determine that it's approvable, we issue a temporary operating permit. I would like to give the full amount of time so the district can review that permit application and issue a temporary operating permit, therefore making their permit condition a legal condition and get them back into compliance in that manner. So our engineering division can operate pretty quickly on things like this, but I don't want to push them into a corner and make them commit to a date. Make them commit to a date that might be unreasonable. We do have a requirement that in the beginning of, I think, the conclusions and orders that the variance is valid until compliance is demonstrated or the final compliance date, whichever is shorter. So I think that kind of keeps them from running out the clock intentionally, which I know they wouldn't do. Be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, questions of the board to the district? Mr. Herlock.
Mr. Duval, it sounds like it's likely during the course of this, if they haven't already, that Veneco will discover some operating conditions with water flow less than 1.4 gallons per hour.
That's ammonia.
That would be optimum and reduce the ammonia slip. I know that the district has some discretion with respect to fees and so forth. I don't know if there's any discretion with respect to NOVs, but it seems like it's not fair for them to receive. I mean, it seems like that once they discover those conditions, that they ought to begin to use them as soon as they know the answer. And is there a way that can happen without it generating NOVs for?
Oh, you mean if they were to reduce their ammonia injection rate prior to getting approval from the district?
Yes.
We typically allow that. If they can identify that the turbine can operate in compliance with both the ammonia rate and the NOx emission rate, we would allow that without any penalties or violations.
So something like an ammonia flow under this, whatever, the 1.4 is not going to generate an NOV?
No, we would use our enforcement discretion in that case.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Murphy.
I think the testimony of the applicant has been that the conditions that would cause ammonia slip actually rarely occur because they don't usually, except in unusual circumstances, go below 50%, and they very seldom use diesel. I think it would be helpful in the statement of facts in the order to point that out, that even though there are, that there are times when there's going to be the exceedances, those are actually going to be rare and of short duration.
Is that not enough to be in the record of the hearing, or do you think it should be written in the?
I took it as a recommendation of a board member to the district to consider that as part of the conditions.
We
You have a comment?
can make a change to reflect that.
Okay. I'd like to ask the petitioner if you're okay with the conditions as provided to you and also discussed here this evening.
Yeah, except for that one, maybe the language a little bit in that number 5 that we brought up, but it looks very good. Thank you very much.
Could I ask Vinico a question regarding that? What would you suggest in number 5 that would be
Okay.
more appropriate?
I'm trying to think from the fact that hopefully we're going to have the other catalyst installed early next week. Is there anything we should change on that pattern, or did I speak too quickly? G1 and G2, avoid. The first line is accurate. The second line is accurate, and I think the third one might be the only, you might put that 30 to 50% load on G3. Is that accurate? Or is it 30 to 50, less than 50 on all of them, on diesel, 50% load?
Is that because you're finding that G3 is better than the table that's in the draft order?
Correct.
Can we think about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, if we do the G2 at 50% and G3 at 30 or 50%, I think we'd be very comfortable not doing that very often, except for that day every 6 weeks we mentioned when we have a blackout out there.
Okay.
That's doable.
I'd like to ask the district if they're comfortable with the petitioner's request.
So turbine G3, let me just try and state what I think we might put in here. Turbine G3 at 50% load or less on diesel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that do it? Okay.
Here or not, yes.
I also heard on G2 you wanted a 50% included in there, is that correct?
Correct.
Right, that's the worst one right now.
How would you state that then, please?
Just change the 30 to 50.
Oh, all right. And district, any comment on that?
No, that would be fine with us. We'd have no problem.
I'd like to ask the board if they have any concerns about the modification to the condition that we just discussed.
Could we review that?
You want to go in the back room?
No, can we review the conditions as they would be in the draft order based on this discussion?
Would you like then, I'd like to ask Mr. Duval to please then, if he wouldn't mind restating the second part of this where Veneco stated that they will avoid operating at the following conditions when possible, and please identify the two modifications I think we had on G2 and G3, please.
Okay, it would say G2 at 50% load or less on diesel. Turbine G3 at 50% load or less on diesel.
Board okay with that? Okay. Petitioner, any other comments on the conditions?
No,
Okay.
we're grateful. Thank you for your help.
Okay, so the conditions are accepted by the petitioner?
Mr. Gasparino?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to offer two minor changes to conditions 7 and 8, or findings 7 and 8. And for finding number 7, after the introductory statement, I would like to put in there the statement, platform Gale is located 10 miles offshore from Ventura, so a nuisance to the general public is specified in Rule 59, Rule 51 is not expected to occur. That's the statement that shows up in number 8, and it should be up in number 7. For finding number 8, I would suggest that we rephrase this to say platform Gale is located 10 miles offshore from Ventura. So an acute threat or hazard to the general, I'm trying to rephrase this, to the general public is not expected to occur. And that addresses the finding better than what I have. We just kind of cut and pasted wrong.
What do we put in place of Rule 51 if you make that change?
Oh, it would I think it would say platform Gale is located 10 miles offshore from Ventura. So an acute threat or hazard to the general public's health or safety is not expected to occur.
And that reflects one of the, I think, conditions or concerns for a short variance on the health and safety code. Is that correct?
This is actually a condition, a finding that is not in the health and safety code. This is our district rule only.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've heard from the petitioner and also from the district. Any other questions that the board has for either at this point? Okay. At this point, I'd like to close the hearing on this petition, and I'd like to ask, is there a comment or public would like to address this particular item? Okay, thank you. Okay, then at this point, I'd like to ask the board for their recommendation and hopefully a motion on this particular short variance that's before us this evening.
I'm pretty satisfied with the testimony, and we had a good clarification here tonight, I think, and based on that, I'd like to move that the the petition be granted and the draft order as revised here move forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and if I could ask for just one thing to be added, and that is we're recommending the full 90 days, because that was something we had discussed earlier.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask the clerk, please, to pull the board. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Aye.
Mr. Hurlock?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparino?
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys, thanks.
At this time, knowing that there's no public comment, don't pack up yet. We do have an election of chair and vice chair, which is well overdue by at least a year, for 2011-2012. So I'm asking the board for a nomination for chair to replace me.
I would like to nominate Mr. Hurley.
Mr. Hurlock?
Hurley. Yes, I've worked with Hurley.
And I will second that. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hurlock?
Aye.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparino?
Aye. And for vice chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Murphy.
I'll second that. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Stubblefield?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparino?
Aye.
And Mr. Hurlock?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. I guess at this point, we do know that we will have a continuance to the 14th of March. Is that correct, for finished production? Any other information or upcoming petitions that the district has to offer before we close the meeting?
No, just one note. We did forget to bring the claim forms tonight, so we'll bring those in 2 weeks for tonight's meeting and next meetings.
The claim form.
Claim forms?
For attendance.
Yeah.
All right. Hearing board meeting is adjourned at 6:48.